I'm Bill Young, and this is the 11th episode of the Swishes podcast. The reason these podcasts exist is to help us, the participants, learn about media communication. And this episode is a little bit different from the previous ones. We've each taken a separate news item to discuss. But before it starts, I do wish to apologise for some audio problems. As I said, we are here to learn about communications, and we're not quite right yet. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it. So, welcome to the Swishes podcast, and I'm really pleased to be here with Nadia Stoykov, Armin Scharlach, and Ciaran Crossan. And I'm Bill Young, and today we're going to be talking about some news items. So, this will be slightly different from the usual podcast that we've done, where we take a single topic. Each of us has brought along a topic today. I'm going to find out what those are in a second, and then ask you to introduce the panel to it. So, Nadia, what are you going to bring to us today?
Today, I wanted to discuss with you the role of LinkedIn and how it differs from all the other social networks, if we can call it a social network, and as well, what is its role in the life of the profession, because it's a professional network.
An audience there, Nadia, because I think just about everybody listening will be on LinkedIn. So, Armin, what are you going to tell us about?
I want to tell you about the fly Erica. It was an article that I read in the Swiss newspaper Tagesanzeiger last week about how a fly, or actually two artists, have changed the business model of an insect extermination company entirely. Very interesting, very heartwarming story.
Right. I may be a bit skeptical on that with a background in agrochemicals and pesticides and having been an insecticide product manager. So this fly and I may not be the best of friends. I'm going to try and bring you today something about the rolling back of ESG and how companies seem to be tripping over each other to disavow everything they've ever said about ESG and carbon and everything else. I've never seen so many people racing for the exit at one time, crushing each other on the rush to leave the room. And Ciaran, what are you going to bring to us today?
What I thought I would talk about today was whether opening a can of worms can bring us nuggets of gold. So it's a recent order by Donald Trump to allow mining on the seabed, both inside and outside of the United States' exclusive economic zone in the sea. So
That sounds fat. Why don't you carry on, Ciaran, and tell us a bit more about these seabed nuggets?
right. Okay. Well, I encountered this article. I don't know if you want me to mention it or not, both in The Economist and about a year ago in a podcast I was listening to by Tortoise Media. So it's sort of been piquing my interest for a while. There's an area of the seabed just to the west of Hawaii called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, and it's approximately 5.3 million square kilometers. The Pacific Ocean itself is about 170 million square kilometers, so it's not actually a big area. Through some form of oceanographic chemistry or the magic of this earth, what appears to have happened in this zone is elemental metal particles have aggregated with each other into things that are known as polymetallic nodules, and they're basically lying on the seabed, covered. Obviously, some of them will be covered in silt, but effectively, mining companies have experimented with things that resemble a combine harvester, and they kind of do an open cast roll and can extract these nodules up onto ships for further processing and purification. What is significant about this area is the type of nodules that it contains. It contains nodules that have nickel, cobalt, manganese, which are three very important elements for electronics and for the modern world. And it's estimated that current amounts that are in this CCZ contain 4 times the Earth's known cobalt reserves, which is quite a significant amount of metal, and it could make things that we know are dirty, such as the manufacture of electronics, the refining of metal, it could make it more sustainable in the long term. However, under UNCLOS, which is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and the International Seabed Association, the current mode of approach is that we humans are not allowed to interfere with the seabed. So this is something that we've taken upon ourselves, that we wouldn't interfere with the seabed. It's a resource for all humanity. And so there is currently no framework, no law, no means even legally to perform deep sea mining. But our friend in the White House, Donald Trump, on the 24th of April this year, he signed an executive order. Now, his executive orders are what they are, both a mixture of legal and illegal, but he signed an executive order to allow American companies to begin exploiting deep sea mining, both inside the United States' exclusive economic zone and controversially, yes.
I was just going to ask Nadia and Armin if you do, because all sorts of things bubbling up in my mind at the moment about, first reaction is it's horrendous for the environment. Second reaction is, couldn't this lead to a third world war as everyone goes for it? And so on and so on.
From a game theory perspective, what it simply means is when you stop following common agreements, how to cooperate on things where there is unclear who is really owning something, it invites everyone else to forget about any kind of regulation as well. And this is why that will have consequences way beyond what it does to the environment in this particular part of this planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just on that, the government of Nauru, one of the kind of island states or micro island states, is already sponsoring a company with the ISA to look for a mining license for an area of the Pacific Ocean, which also sits outside Nauru's economic exclusion zone as well. So this is not just Donald Trump doing this.
Okay.
There's other countries are involving themselves in it.
But Nauru is before Donald Trump's executive order.
I know Nauru because that used to be the source of most of the world's phosphates from the bird guano that was buried, that was dug up from it. Sorry, that's an aside.
Yeah, and I think it's also thought to be one of the first nations that's in danger of disappearing from the earth if we don't manage to get climate control or climate change under control and sea levels continue to rise. But there is an opportunity here. There is an organization. There's about 129 members of the International Seabed Association. So that would be pretty much every nation in the world that has a literal shoreline. There's an opportunity, and there appears to be division in the ISA between countries like the UK, Netherlands, France, Belgium, now also probably the United States, are quite keen to explore and study how to achieve this in the least damaging way for the seabed environment. Because what's at stake? There's areas of the seabed that are unexplored. There's elements of life that we have not yet discovered. I think there's a quote I'd heard somewhere that we know more about the surface of Jupiter than we do about what's actually at the bottom of the ocean.
I heard something, I was actually coincidentally on the radio this morning. On the surface of the Earth, life evolves quite quickly. At the bottom of the ocean, it's a factor of 100 or 1,000 times slower. What you do will take orders of magnitude longer to recover than it would if you're just chopping down bits of the Amazon.
I mean, where these elements are mined are usually in, well, they're quite conflicted zones. They're usually in fairly hard to get to zones where we may not have done as much exploration as we want to either. So, some rainforest in Indonesia could be life forms that we destroy there that could be equally beneficial. So to me, as I read the story, there's a balancing act. Some of the principal world's governments need to be prepared to take on. I don't think the situation would be tenable to leave it completely unregulated. One thing is Donald Trump signing an executive order on the 24th of April does not mean that on the 25th of April there's going to be big ships hoovering up the seabed off the coast of Hawaii. You probably have a research and development project that could take anywhere between 4 to 10 years to even have a viable economic model to do that. It does kind of squeeze the trigger on a starting gun that this is going to happen.
Are there any implications for the rest of us in terms of our approach to contracts, business? Or is this something we just have to watch and roll with and vote when the time comes, but there might not be any implications for our daily careers and jobs and livelihoods?
My honest view on that is this is something that Trump himself is doing. The man has got no respect even for his own country's constitution. So does that create a change for us? Yeah, I guess it does, because ignore your contracts at your peril, but just remember there's a judge there that can put you in jail.
One thing what I mentioned earlier from a game theory perspective, if someone is not feeling bound to any regulation any longer, then it invites everyone else. But the other very problematic thing with this particular endeavor, in my opinion, is that it was already hard enough for NGOs to bring visibility on the brutal factors of the way how this mining is happening today when it's happening on the surface. every kind of pollution that is happening in the deep, deep ocean will be hidden from the rest of mankind for a long time until it comes up someday and is not changeable anymore. And this it not only implies a big risk and danger, but it automatically almost invites profit-oriented organizations not to spend more money than necessary to protect something if they feel that no one is going to see the damage anytime soon anyway.
I agree with that, but where I would push back on is if one looks at the way the mining industry has been kind of traditionally constructed, okay, there's the big companies like Rio Tinto, BHP, and so forth, but there's also a lot, certainly in areas like Africa and so on, there's a lot of small bad actors. At least Rio Tinto, BHP, you can exercise some form of a control over them, but some African warlord with an AK-47, you've got no chance.
But you have only control about what they're telling you, because what is really happening is so far away from any observation.
I work for a mining company, guys, and I can tell you, and I know all of these players, they're very, very environmentally responsible because they've been watched under a magnifying glass. And not only because they've been watched under magnifying glass, but there is certain social cost. You need to not only take care of your workers and ensure safety, because safety varies, but as well look for the earth and how much you extract them, from where do you extract them, why, and so on. So I agree with Ciaran that actually at least the big companies are in the focus of society and they've been watched. And because they've been watched, they try to set up an example. So that's better than the warlord, of course.
We seem to be talking about some sort of self-policing there, which is not
No.
wholly reassuring, but we must move on. So let's talk a little bit about what you've picked up this week, Nadia, about LinkedIn.
So I'm a fan of LinkedIn. At the beginning, I was very skeptical in going to work, but at that time, there was no Facebook. I have to say that LinkedIn was the very first. And then Facebook came and brought the image of this social networking into the brain, slowly but surely. Now, the discussion in this article was Microsoft, who is the current owner of LinkedIn, have they really monetized all the value of LinkedIn because they haven't introduced ads? So do they have to have ads or not? You know, my hair goes up when just trying to imagine how LinkedIn will be polluted with stupid ads. And I hope that never happens, because at the end of the day, if you unify LinkedIn as any other of the social networks, the 1.1 billion users that are today using it quite significantly, going to disappear in my view, because nobody needs the same, a little bit more of the same. It's just not. Yeah.
Kind of my question was whether Microsoft have been able to successfully monetize LinkedIn. Because, yeah, you're right, it doesn't have an ad revenue, but I do continually get adverts for, is it LinkedIn Premium?
Yes. The
Yes,
premium
there's
is their way of collecting money. They turned it into something like searching platform. As well, they have special packages for recruiters, because I've been on the recruiting side as well, and for these premiums for, the candidates. So from both sides, they get some money, although the premium package is for the candidates is not something that is really worth it. But for the recruiters, it's a superpower. There is hardly a company under the sun in the Western world that is not using LinkedIn for recruiting purposes.
Yeah.
And now with the introduction of artificial intelligence, actually, it really proves to be very efficient staffing platform. Very efficient, very quick, and not expensive. Not as expensive as it used to be. Yeah? Go on, Ciaran.
Yeah, well, my next comment would be that if they started to put adverts on it, or it degenerated into the cesspit that we know Facebook and Twitter or X has become, it destroys the brand.
Absolutely. That is my opinion as well. So they're hesitating now. And I'm very afraid that they will go the lucrative way. Although I would really prefer to have something like LinkedIn continue to be what it is. And it generated enough money. I mean, its revenue went from 3 to 17 billion in the past 8 years. This is earning from the staffing platforms. Imagine.
Yeah, I think I read the same article, and I think I also read that whilst it has quite a lot of subscribers, not as many as Facebook and TikTok and things,
Oh, big
the
progress.
usage rate, however, the engagement is very, very low. People like the four of us all signed up to LinkedIn, all counted as subscribers. Everyone we know probably counted as subscribers, but we don't thumb scroll all day long trying to find out, looking for cat pictures and that sort of thing. They're not there. Well, no, unfortunately, they are
They're coming now.
They're coming now. Yeah.
LinkedIn is pushing a lot to go on videos instead of text articles, because they expect that this will people do more doom scrolling.
Yeah.
I principally use LinkedIn to remember my friends' birthdays.
Yeah, but there is no year. This is the clue. It's only a day.
It just gives you the date plus or minus a few days.
So it's very kind. But the other thing is the intelligence level of people using LinkedIn compared to TikTok, for example, is just, times the others. And I think that this type of audience is really sick of the other model. So that's why even if you don't spend hours now on LinkedIn, because we're all busy, we don't have time to watch. And even if they have cat videos, I wouldn't watch it anymore. Whatever you use it for is really useful. You read about very interesting posts of people that you know or you don't know, or somebody sent you. It's really thought-provoking. I like it. I personally like it and I use it.
I'm finding it less and less thought-provoking. Do you actually wish people a happy birthday on it? Because I'm a bit fed up with people who are wishing people happy birthday, and you get announcements saying, I'm so happy to be joining this company, or it's 10 years at such and such. Advertisements would make that totally unbearable. It's interesting to hear Nadia saying that the average IQ, intelligence level or whatever of LinkedIn may be higher than for others. Not sure I go along with it totally, but I did read in the same article that Microsoft is possibly going to start using LinkedIn to train AI models because it's so close to business, that an AI model trained on LinkedIn should be speaking the user's language much more easily. And of course, the data is free.
Absolutely, and that's the future inevitably.
Because we've already signed it away.
That's right. That could be another Swissues. I'd love to have a whole Swissues event on personal data and why we sign it away and how we could keep it. But I want to find out about these flies.
Before we go into the flies, one last aspect on the LinkedIn one, because I had a discussion with LinkedIn some years ago already, where I thought, hey, guys, why aren't you really doing a disruptive move for the service industry? And that includes all the consultants, because if you think about it, at the moment, companies are hiring consultants because they know the partners and they trust that these partners will be able to find within the organization the right people to solve the problem that someone is having. If LinkedIn would be better in giving you a more systematic way to find people by what they really know, and that not only means that it would show that I have done SAP, but it was 25 years ago and therefore is long forgotten and not really usable anymore, but by really using a competency matrix where it tells you how good is the experience of someone, and you could filter that with attributes on Amazon also. You could identify from the millions and millions and millions of experts registered on LinkedIn, the very ones that have the knowledge that you need for a current problem, and offer them a couple of days, a couple of weeks, good salary to solve your problem. It would take away the entire consulting industry, but LinkedIn is not going that way for whatever reason.
I think it's safe. I think the consulting industry is safe because if that's the competition. So let's hear about the flies.
Yeah, the fly Erica. I love that story. As I said, I read it in a newspaper in the Tagesanzeiger last week. It was actually quite some time ago in 2012, where Hans-Dietrich Reckhaus, owner of the Reckhaus insect extermination company, had reached out to two artists asking them to help him with an advertisement campaign for a new fly trap. And these two artist brothers, by the way, were actually convincing him to question his entire business model, and instead of emphasizing on insect extermination, to more pivot towards non-lethal insect repellents. As astonishing as it sounds, they were able to convince him, and nowadays 75% of the products that this company is selling are repellents and not extermination products anymore. The ones that still have poison in it have an explicit label on it, kills valuable insects, so that people are reminded to really only use it as the last line of defense if nothing else is working. Part of this exercise was that they did an art campaign and captured a couple of flies, and one of them, Erica, was put into a fly wellness hotel for the rest of her few days. And after her demise, she was put in a glass sarcophagus, put into the University on St. Gallen, the HSG. And there is at the moment a discussion whether she is allowed to stay there or whether she is taken away to somewhere else. And the students are heavily voting for her to give her eternal rest in the university. So a wonderful story that has worked out very well, where a fly and artist have actually influenced the entire business model of a company. And while they suffered revenue losses in the beginning, in the long run, and that is for me as a game theorist, obviously the more interesting part of it, he actually has created a differentiator and has been very successful with that move, making it very different to everyone else in that industry, and has benefited a lot from that move.
So is this a repellent? Is this a chemical repellent for insects?
Nowadays, 75% are traps that capture insects in a living way, so they're not killing them, so that you can put them somewhere else, or that they are repelling them, and so that they're not getting into the area where you don't want to have them. Killing them is really just the ultimate ratio for, and in 25% of the products that they're selling these days.
Right. I don't get the traps, because surely insects only live for a couple of days or weeks. So who's going to take them away and give them a good home somewhere else?
People with a conscience who think that's not necessarily giving them a home, but if you have an insect in your house, and as long as you bring it outside, it might make you feel better.
So this isn't really, the customers are not commercial customers, are they? These are people with a conscience.
Yeah, both. But I guess the traps are probably more for the private customers. I'm with you.
But, again, this is not very revolutionary, right? It's a nice story about some marketing of this flag. But these repellents have been known for ages, for centuries, because there are certain plants that will repel animals, and if you put them in your insects, and if you put them in your house, then they don't come in. And I'm myself one of those that when they come to spray for spiders, we're the only ones that don't want to be sprayed for spiders, because together with the spiders, I don't want to kill spiders, I will see the point, but you kill everything else, including bees, that could be around. And I agree that this is environmentally very stupid practice, and repelling in some natural way is really the way to go.
Don't they just send them to the next door farm?
Wow. I don't send them anywhere. You just don't kill
If you
them.
repel the insects from your field, and they just go to your neighbor's
Yes,
field.
but at least they live their natural life. The point is get the mosquitoes out of the house. For example, with some natural repellents. So
let's stay with the example of spiders. Are you killing spiders, Bill, or are you capturing them and release them outside of your apartment?
I capture and release.
Good. Well, means that you have a conscience and you...
But listen, the spiders are eating mosquitoes. So we want as many spiders as possible, because that's a natural way of repelling.
But Nadia's right. This is ancient technology. I mean, neem trees in India have fulfilled this role for thousands of years. And when you plant, is it marigolds or something alongside carrots? It's not marigolds. It's something else. They stop carrot root fly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I once spent a very uncomfortable night in a room in Mexico with a wolf spider running around, and that definitely one that I think I would have killed if I'd been able to get close to it.
How big was the wolf spider?
Yeah, but that's a big one.
That's not an insect. That's already a reptile, probably.
But I'm still skeptical on this fly Erica thing, because I just looked it up in a book that I have. There's a poisonous mushroom called
fly agaric.
Yes. Is this a play on words? Is this a play on words by
not that I think so. No.
Yeah,
Didn't come out on April the 1st.
It was last week in the Tagesanzeiger, and Tagesanzeiger is one of the two most reputed newspapers with reputation here in Switzerland. So I very much doubt that this was a fun piece.
No, but they had nothing else to write about, but about.
Yeah, we shouldn't joke too much about it. I think
let's not libel a newspaper or slander a newspaper.
What I really like with the stories is that instead of just going the easy way and continuing what this guy had been doing in the past, he took it as an opportunity to rethink, and whether you always decide to change the game or not is a different thing. But I think that is something that very often would help if people are stepping aside for a moment and reflect and see what I'm doing, and is what I'm doing the right thing, or should I change it? And here we have a good example for someone who has changed his entire business at some cost initially, but with tremendous benefit in the long run. And I think that is a great example that reminds everyone to do this exercise once in a while.
For a few years now, we've had companies trying to be greener than everyone else. Annual reports, promotions, product advertising, all trying to show that they were buying carbon credits, had a net zero target, doing all sorts of stuff to appear green. And of course, they were accused of it just being public relations. But even the most skeptical people like me must be really shocked at how quickly they are heading for the exit. They are scrapping net zero targets. They are obliterating their DEI targets. They are giving up all pretense of being green or environmentally aware. They're almost doing the exact opposite. I don't think that's something we can discuss. It's more like observing it. I do find it extraordinarily depressing to have worked in big corporations and suddenly to be having this example of how far public relations is from actual policy. Even for a skeptic like myself, it's come as a shock to find the gulf between what they say and what they do. Over to you, Ciaran.
Yeah, well, you're skeptical and I'm cynical. I think some of the companies, and this is a view that I have, some of the companies that had engaged in ESG in an insincere manner, I think they're just seeing this as an opportunity to sort of drop the mask and say, well, look, we didn't care about it anyway. But I do think there are other companies that are eliminating DEI by renaming it because there is a current political wind that says if you have DEI practices, then we're going to castigate you in the media as being, some woke snowflake, tofu eating wokerati of the left wing. Yet we're going to just drop all our DEI hiring practices and we'll just institute a sensible equal opportunities hiring practice. I think there are some elements of that. I know there are definitely other companies that were engaging in what gets called greenwashing, and then this is just an opportunity for them to stop spending on the advertising budget. That's kind of my view.
I agree with you because I can tell you in the automotive industry, we've been constantly put by the OEMs to buy sustainable products. And we do have products which are sustainable, made of recycled, ocean collected plastics and so on. You know the price of this? It's 3 times the price of the lawnmower part. And when you go to the OEM and try to qualify it, they said, oh, no, but it's too expensive. Okay, but you want sustainable and your customers are asking for sustainable. Are they going to pay for it? They said, no, they're not going to pay for it. And that's it. You drop it right there. Because at the end of the day, for sustainability to work, there are a very important element of the pull from the consumer. And not only a push from the consumer needs to want it. And to, let's say, for example, I'm going to buy only bio products. That's it. I'm not going to buy anything else. So stop with the rest. I mean, once this happens, then it's going to be really meaningful. But it used to be a political imperative. Well, everybody should have it. And it doesn't make sense all the time. And that's why I'm thinking, Bill, that some of these companies thought, okay, let's stop with the hypocrisy and just continue with the rest of the business. Maybe that was the thinking. I don't know.
I think that's interesting because I was looking on it as shameless. Ciaran is saying maybe they are carrying on doing the right thing, but calling it something else so that they can continue to do it. Nadia is saying maybe they're just using it as an excuse to tell the truth, You know, they didn't mean it all along. Now they're using this as an excuse to tell it the way it really is.
Yeah, or get themselves off a hook that they've hung themselves on.
Get off the hook is the point. Yeah. That's what I was trying to say, I think. Yeah, but it's shameless. Is anyone else upset by it, or is it just me? I think the reason I'm so upset is that for a few years, I've been saying to anyone that would listen, their so-called sustainability policies were in themselves not sustainable. They didn't make sense. They kept saying, "Oh, you know, we'll find it'll be cheaper for us. It'll be better to be sustainable." Well, it's not. And it was pretty obvious that it wouldn't be. At some point, there's a crunch and you have to pay for this. But it was the denials, the lies that people were telling about their sustainability policies in the face of common sense and logic. The fact that they can come in now and just drop it so fast.
It is frustrating, absolutely. And I think the reason is deeply in the way how we humans are ticking. And the cost of this denial is a cost that the people who are denying things right now are not going to pay, because it will be the kids and the grandkids generation that will really suffer. And what I find extremely problematic is that even those people who have kids and should care about how their future is looking like are forgetting about sustainability, as long as it is coming at a cost for them.
That environment will never be improved by individual voluntary actions. And if companies really want to improve the environment, they ought to be lobbying government hard to bring in rules to create an equal and even playing field, so that the companies know that unless they're recycling the plastic bottles usably, and being able to prove it, that they're not allowed to use the plastic, and that there is a price for every ton of carbon dioxide that you put into the atmosphere, and that it reflects the cost of taking it back out of the atmosphere. Ciaran?
I agree with you, but I see it from a slightly different way. I don't think the companies should be lobbying the government. No company is going to do that. And the CEO of every company has got one job to do, and that's to maximize profit. What needs to happen is governments need to give that CEO two jobs to do. One is maximize profit, and then the other one is to have some form of ESG or social responsibilities. Now, I think there are some countries around the world that are doing that, but the big elephant in the room is the United States. And cash is king. A company will only do that if they see the opportunity to sell one more widget or one more bottle of water by saying, "Oh, we're doing this. We bottle feed bumblebees," by showing those credentials or striving to obtain those credentials. So I don't think a company is going to lobby for that. I think a company is going to lobby for the opposite. And we as governments, with our governments, we need to vote for governments that will do that.
That's a couple of steps in there that I'm not sure are going to happen, but it's possibly an optimistic way to wind up. Thank you. It has been interesting. Ciaran Crossan, Nadia Stoykov, and Armin Scharlach, who joined me, Bill Young, today to share some views on 4 different topics that we brought to the table, slightly different from what we usually do. Hope you've enjoyed it. Until the next Swishes, goodbye.